We just had Valentine's Day. I don't know if you guys knew that on Friday. So there was this quote running around on Facebook I saw from C.S. Lewis, and I grabbed it because I thought this is a good quote and it kind of fits in along with the lines of what it is that we're going to be talking about today, because today we're going to be talking about love, and our title is God is Love. So we're going to be looking at some of those verses in 1 John. But C.S. Lewis he's one of those great people that is able to put some things into words, and so I wanted us to look at this quote from him. Adam, if you can pull that up. To love at all is to be vulnerable. Love anything and your heart will be wrung and possibly broken. If you want to make sure of keeping it intact, you must give it to no one, not even an animal. Wrap it carefully around with hobbies and little luxuries. Avoid all entanglement. Lock it up safe in a casket or coffin of your selfishness. But in that casket, safe, dark, motionless, airless, it will change. It will not be broken. It will become unbreakable, impenetrable, irredeemable. To love is to be vulnerable. I want us to remember that quote, but especially that last line. To love is to be vulnerable. Let's think of that as we read through our verses today. We're going to read through some verses in 1 John chapter 4. We're going to skip. We're going to read a few verses and then skip a section and read a few more verses. But have no fear, we will come back to those verses next Sunday. We will be going over those verses. But I wanted to, and for the sake of time, I wanted us to just read these few verses. We're going to start 1 John chapter 4, we're going to read verses 7 and 8 first. Dear friends, let us love one another, for love comes from God. Everyone who loves has been born of God and knows God. Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love. I love this statement in 1 John. God is love. And then we're going to skip over to verse 16. And so we know and rely on the love God has for us. God is love. Whoever lives in love lives in God and God in them. This is how love is made complete among us, so that we will have the confidence on the day of judgment. In this world, we are like Jesus. There is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear, because fear has to do with punishment. The one who fears is not made perfect in love. We love because he first loved us. We read those words. We read the words at the beginning of the book, the beginning of the biblical text. In the beginning, God. We're going to be talking specifically about God today. In the beginning, God. God was in the beginning. Before anything was created, God was there, right? God was there. There is no one higher than God. There was no one who created God. God was there in the beginning, and God has been since the beginning. In theology, the way that we present this idea is to say that God is transcendent. Another thing we might say is God is wholly other. He is not a creation. He is fully independent from us. And in the beginning, God created. The word bara in the Hebrew. In the beginning, God created. God bara. So God, while wholly other, While God was wholly other, he wanted to share his love. He wanted to be relational. And so God created. God didn't create because he needed to. God didn't create because he had something that he needed us to do. God didn't create because he wanted to create us to gain something for himself. God created because he desired to. God created us because he desired us. He wanted to share his love with us. So in the beginning, God created, God barad, and it was good, right? We read that in the Genesis text. He created, and it was good. And God realized that man was relational as well. And God created woman, right? And it was good. And God created man and woman, and he was in relationship with them, and he would share his love with them, and he would shower his love upon them, his creation. He would walk alongside them. But the thing about love, the thing about true, perfected love, is that there has to be a choice. Right? There has to be a choice in love. If there's not a choice in love, then it's just captivity, right? There has to be a choice in love. So God lays down boundaries, but he gives this within his creation free will. God wants them to choose his love. God desires to love people to the fullest extent of his love. But God does not force his love upon anyone. Because God's love in the purest form, God's love is the purest form because God is love, as we read in 1 John. We were given free will because without it, we are captive, right? Without free will, then we aren't truly loving. We also aren't held by fear. We shouldn't be held by fear in loving God, because God's love, perfect love in purest form, as we saw in 1 John, casts out all fear. Right? And so in the beginning, God created, and it was good. And he gave mankind free will. He gave him a choice. And it just so happens to be a choice that we make time and time and time again. And since we talked last week about some of the different beliefs within the Christian, all of Christianity, I want to say that God doesn't make us make the wrong choice, right? We understand that God doesn't lead us to sin. He also doesn't just save us if we're part of the elect. He doesn't just say, okay, now you have been granted grace because I have chosen you, right? The choice we make is, do I love God enough to respect his boundaries or to do my own thing? Do I love this, and you fill in the blank, whatever it is, money, power, prestige, self-indulgences? Do I love this more than I love God? We give grief to Adam and Eve for making this decision, when really we're placed in the position to make the same choices a lot. Because from that point, there's a lean inward, right, towards ourselves. And we tend to get tangled in things, and we distract ourselves from the love that is freely given to us. Because you see, when we were created for a relationship with our Creator. And when we're not in relationship with our Creator, when we choose to not have that relationship, we do feel like there is something off, and we tend to gain relationships that maybe shouldn't be there, or we fill that void with something. C.S. Lewis said, hobbies or luxuries, right? We fill that love that should be from our Creator with something to try to make us feel better. And those things never make us feel better, because we were created to be in relationship with our Creator. We maybe attempt to fill that void with other relationships or with alcohol or whatever it may be. This relationship, in the beginning, this relationship that was given to us was perfect, this perfect love. And because of the choices that were made, it was marred. But God, in His infinite wisdom and love, wants more for us. He doesn't want us to just be trapped within this marred relationship. God does become upset when we tangle ourselves up in things that are beyond the boundaries that He has set for us, because every time we tangle ourselves up into things that are beyond the boundaries that He has set from us, He understands that that is taking away from the relationship that He has with us. When we do things to fill that void other than to have a relationship with Him, we are only putting more stuff in between our relationship with God and us. With God and us. Part of the reason why He dislikes when we get tangled up in these things is because He understands the effects that it has in our relationship with Him, but also it affects the relationships that we have with others. That starts to become tangled once again. And the weight that comes from some of those things that we do to fill that void become heavy. And the more we do, we tend to add weight. And it just gets heavier and heavier until we come to that point where we say those words, Lord, I feel the weight of all that I have done. I know I was made for more than this. Can you help me carry this weight? And God, in His infinite wisdom, says, yes, my dear child, I have a way. I have a way. We shouldn't come to this kind of moment by fear. His perfect love casts out all fear, right? We shouldn't come to a moment like this where we say, Lord, this is getting too heavy and I can't do it on my own. We shouldn't come to this moment just by a fear of the repercussions of what might happen if we don't come to this moment. We shouldn't come to this moment by the slick words of a pastor that's trying to coerce us. We shouldn't come to this moment in coercion. We shouldn't come to this moment by our ancestors, meaning, oh, I've always been, my family's always been, so I am. We should really only come to this moment, that kind of moment, through love. Realizing that we were made for more. Realizing that there is a creator God that loves us so much that he made a way for us to be in perfect relationship with him through the cross. He desired a relationship so much with us that he made a way so that we could still have a relationship with him. That we would no longer have to carry the weight of the world. That we can come to him because his yoke is light. Right? God, in his infinite wisdom, made a way so that we can find our way back to that relationship that we were created for. And in that, others will see we love because he first loved us. We love in a pure way because we are loved in a pure way. Because God's love for us doesn't change based on our actions. That's a heavy thing, and it's a truth. God's love for us doesn't change based on our actions. We are loved today as much as we always have been, but it's on us to accept that love. It's on us to accept that love and to let it overflow in our lives and to let it transform our lives so that we don't necessarily look at these boundaries as, oh, I've got to do this in order for God to love me. But we go, I love God so much, I want to stay within the boundaries because I understand he has better things planned for me. And when we live in that, when we understand how much we are loved, and that love overflows. That love overflows in the way that we speak, in our actions, in our thoughts, and the others see the light that's within us, and it shows into a world that darkness once had control over, and it doesn't anymore. As we sang this morning, we are raised to new life, right? We are raised to new life. The weight that once was upon us is now gone. And the blood, Jesus' blood, has cleansed us. Cleansed us, not just covered us over, right? Has cleansed us. And we no longer have to bear the weight of the world. We accept that love in the place that we have within the family. If we accept that love and fill out our role, which is to be in relationship with God and sing his praises to the world. We love because he first loved us. Now, some manuscripts translate this verse have a qualifier. Some of the different translations within the biblical text of the Bible add a qualifier to this. They say, the King James Version says, we love God because he first loved us. A lot of those that translated the King James Version were Calvinists or the Reformed tradition. So they would have had this, the New King James Version, they would have had this, added this qualifier. But really, in the truest form of what they're saying in 1 John and what John's saying, it is just like this. We love because he first loved us. We love because he first loved us. There's no qualifier. We love. We love because he first loved us. Holiness, therefore, what we strive for, this holiness, is described as perfected love. Loving God and loving others in a way that we are called to love them. Holiness, as I said, can be described as perfect love. I brought this mug today. It sits on my dresser in the bedroom. It's a mug that I got at Nazarene Theological Seminary. And I don't really use it, I just kind of keep it on my dresser. But it's got a picture of Mildred Winecoop. She's the one that kind of started in that holiness is perfected love. And she has this quote, and I've got this, and I've got it on a sticker. It's on my water bottle, but I didn't bring my water bottle this morning. But it says, "Love is the essential inner character of holiness, and holiness does not exist apart from love." We as a denomination, we strive for holiness. And in that, it's a perfected love. Loving in the ways that we are supposed to love God and love others. And making sure that there is nothing that stands between that. That there's nothing that we say or do that stands between our relationship with God and our relationship with others. That we strive in a perfected love towards others. Does that mean that we will always do the right thing in our actions? That doesn't mean that we're always going to have everything perfect. But that's what we strive for. We will always make a choice. We will always make a choice to love ourselves or to love God. Every choice that we make comes down to that. And I pray that we continue to lean into what it is that God has for us. And we understand that we were created to be in relationship with God. We're going to close out our service with the song Made for More. I want us to remember that through all of this, that we were made for more, that life isn't just about struggling and feeling the weight of the world, that we were made for more, and we can live into that. That is part of a distinction within the Nazarene theology, is that we can live into that. We really can have holiness, right? We really can love in the ways that we are supposed to love. Let's go ahead and sing Made for More.